Elias, the boys ready to go right here on FanDuel TV. Of course, for your friends on the Ringer Gambling Show, John Jastremski in studio via the 70th floor in lovely New York City, alongside my compadres, Raheem Palmer, Joe House. We have a lot of basketball to break down. We will look ahead to what's to come next week with NFL free agency, and we'll try to get a sense if there is a way to maybe get ahead of a market. Chicago Bears already making moves, trying to beef up that offensive line. I don't want to hear any excuses for Caleb Williams if he goes and stinks up the joint in year two. But where do we begin, boys? House, we got to begin with a team that now all of a sudden has become cursed. Yeah, it's amazing how a curse can happen within a couple of weeks. But you think about the last month for the Dallas Mavericks. The Dallas Mavericks, oh, by the way, who were in the NBA Finals a year ago, who had the great win in the West Finals against Minnesota, who stunned the Oklahoma City Thunder. They trade away Luka Doncic out of nowhere. They go and get Anthony Davis for him. They think that's going to make them a more viable contender. Well, Anthony Davis gets hurt. That's bad. Well, to make matters worse, earlier in the week, Kyrie Irving, you knew it the minute he went and clutched his knee, torn ACL, done for the year. House, I don't know if it's going to be the curse of the Bambino. That's going to be asking a whole lot. But you think about the negative energy and karma that has been attached to the Mavericks over the last few weeks. My goodness, House, what a disaster.
I mean, it's stunning. It's unprecedented. It's appalling for the good people of Dallas, who watched really 20 years worth of sensible team building. I mean, there's some peaks and some valleys for sure. If you want to quibble with Dallas not making a genuine effort to defend its title in the strike-shortened year after Dirk got his chip, okay, you can quibble with that. But by and large, ownership in Dallas has tried to put a product on the floor that's competitive, that, you know, that the city can get behind and the city can invest its support in. And in the matter of less than a month, they have a 10-year horizon that is as bad as any team in any professional sport that they're staring at, because they can't do basic math. It is apparent that they have no capacity to run basic risk models for players with certain injury history, injury profile, age. You can put all these variables directly into, like, if you have Excel, you can build a spreadsheet and you can do some very basic math to compare what does the next 10 years with Luka look like, what does the next 10 years with Anthony Davis and Kyrie look like. And, you know, the most important thing if you're running the team should be, what do my revenues look like? Well, they're down the tubes. And now you seriously have to countenance the possibility, some of the conspiracy theories that were out there when the Luka trade was made, that they have an intention of doing something other than keeping that team in Dallas. So, Dream, I'm at a complete loss. These are just desserts, but it's very unjust for the good people of Dallas.
Yeah, this is like the basketball version of the plot from Major League, where, you know, they were trying to tank and move the team from Cleveland to Miami. And it feels like the Mavericks are trying to do the same thing and move the team to Vegas. But besides that, you don't need a model. You don't need Excel. You don't need Python. You don't need R to tell you that Anthony Street Clothes Davis at 31 years old is not going to be healthier than Luka Doncic. And betting on Anthony Davis to stay healthy, along with Kyrie Irving, who I love, at 32 years of age, is not going to work out for you in the long run. So they traded their franchise player, their star, the guy who everybody loves, who was the heir apparent to Dirk Nowitzki, and they traded it for a one-year title window. And that one-year title window didn't even last a month because the whole team went to the hospital immediately after. I mean, you got Derek Lively. He got hurt. You got Daniel Gafford. He sprains his MCL. Kyrie tears his ACL. I think the Dallas Mavericks, they have one move. And that move is to shut Anthony Davis down and trade him in the offseason. And then you also have to fire Nico. That's how you get this fan base back on board. You trade Anthony Davis, try to get as many picks as possible, tank, and then just reset this whole thing. Throw Nico in the bushes. That's the only move at this point.
You know what I'd call that? Unmitigated disaster. And let's just think about this for a minute, Raheem. Dallas goes all in to make the move that they made. And now, without Davis and without Irving, they are minus 750 on FanDuel to miss the postseason. Just think about that for a minute. Minus 750. So you see a Western Conference where the Lakers are trending in the right direction. The Warriors with Jimmy Butler are most certainly trending in the right direction. And those play-in spots, I know we have talked about Minnesota and our confidence level in Minnesota. The Clippers, you have detailed in eloquent, brilliant fashion about their struggles from an offensive standpoint. So, Raheem, I'll open the floor to you. That Western play-in, we love to get involved with these make-to-miss playoff markets. How are we evaluating things at the moment here, first week of March?
Okay, so right now, it appears that Golden State is going to make the top 6. That's how I'm looking at things. Based on the way they're playing with Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry, I trust them to make the top 6. Now, you're looking at 7, 8, 9, and 10. You look at the Minnesota Timberwolves, Sacramento Kings, Los Angeles Clippers, and Dallas Mavericks. We know the Dallas Mavericks are out of this. I think the Minnesota Timberwolves, they're probably going to finish 7th. They're the best team out of that out of those 3, between the Timberwolves, the Kings, and the Clippers. So you're really looking at who's going to make it between the Kings and the Clippers. And at this point in time, I do not trust this Clippers team at all. You saw on Tuesday night, they were dominating the Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns, I mean, they were just absolutely, like, they could not guard this team at all. And then in the fourth quarter, they completely let off the rope. And I'm looking at this Clippers team since the All-Star break. They're 1-6. They're 19th in offensive rating. This team cannot score. And their best player in Norman Powell has been hurt. So you look at Kawhi Leonard, you look at James Harden. They are clearly not the same players that they used to be. So I think the Clippers are going to fall out of the postseason. And as far as the Phoenix Suns, I still don't trust this team. So I think it's going to end up being Minnesota and Sacramento to finish with those last couple of spots.
So that's interesting, JJ, because the Clippers are on the FanDuel Sportsbook right now, the prohibitive favorite to catch that AC to make the Western Conference playoffs, minus 250, and the Kings are at plus 164. Now, some of that price is influenced by the fact that Sabonis is out, and we don't know how long he's going to be out for the Kings. And the Kings have had the benefit of a decent little bit of schedule. They've won a couple games, strung together some wins. They have a very difficult schedule coming up. I don't really have a strong point of view as between Clippers and Kings for that 8th spot. The place that I want to get involved is the play-in, because the FanDuel Sportsbook has odds for that as well. And if you subscribe to the point of view that I think all 3 of us subscribe to, which is bye-bye Dallas, and it's what makes the most sense for Dallas, is for them to shut the whole thing down, get the highest draft pick they can, and figure out the reset button that they're going to push. Dream made a great case for the reset button they should push. Nico's going to be back to selling sneakers before he knows it. But look, in that play-in market, the Suns are plus 195 to jump over Dallas and make the play-in. The team I'm interested in is the Portland Trailblazers at plus 950. Now, the last 21 games, 15-6, and there is something going on with the chemistry with Denny Avdia and my man Kamara. And look, there is one of the stats that I saw, the great John Schumann at NBA.com. There are 8 players who have had a 30-point triple-double this season, 7 of whom are all-stars, NBA for all team, and Denny Avdia, my guy from D.C., that they traded out of here because we were in full rebuild mode. We couldn't have that man's ascension. We to the Washington franchise credit, getting rid of Denny and letting him shine this way with Portland made a lot of sense. Now, the problem with Portland, and the reason they're priced at plus 950, their schedule in March is brutal. But if they can hold water, if they can be just around 500, they might go on a run in April. The first several games in April, they really can make some hay, but they have a bunch of these tough games through the balance of March. So you are being compensated, I think, at that plus 950. I don't want to bet on the Suns. But one of the Suns or Portland, to me, is going to be in the play-in because the Dallas Mavericks don't belong there. They belong in the bushes with Nico. And so I think a little bit of speculative play on both of those two teams makes sense.
I can't believe I'm suggesting this, Raheem, because you know how much I have been out and I have been burned and I'm sick and tired of talking about this Phoenix team. When you look at the teams that are vying for this final spot within the Western Conference, and I see the price that's in front of me right now, House mentioned the idea of Phoenix getting in the play-in. I think it's a little under 2-1. To make the playoffs, Raheem, plus 980. It's juicy value. I'm not saying I'm definitely going to do it. What I am saying is I'm tempted by the number. Should I just lay off that temptation?
Yes, you should lay off that temptation. Guess who has the toughest remaining schedule in the NBA? It's the Phoenix Suns. They have games against the Boston Celtics. They have games against the Cleveland Cavaliers. They have games against the Oklahoma City Thunder, the New York Knicks, the Los Angeles Lakers, the Denver Nuggets. This is not a team I want to back under any circumstances. And if you look at the Phoenix Suns, since the All-Star break, they are 3-5 straight up. And they are 25th in spread differential, minus 6.3. They are 27th in defensive rating, 122 points per 100 possessions. There is no circumstances in which I'm going to bet this team. And yes, they came back from against the Clippers the other night. But as I mentioned, this Clippers team is 1-6 straight up since the All-Star break. They cannot score points, and Norm Powell was out. And if you look at that first half, the Clippers scored at will. So I do not trust this Phoenix Suns team at all. Look at some of the games that they've lost. They lost to the Pelicans, who was a tanking team. They went to war with the Chicago Bulls, who are a tanking team. Like, this team is not very good at all. So if they make the playoffs, fine. But I will not be betting on them to make the postseason at all.
See, this is why, House, I'm glad that I laid off the temptation of saying, yeah, it's a juicy number at plus 980. But when Raheem gives us that breakdown of the schedule and the games they have, and you also consider how just putrid the Suns have been for the majority of this year, there's a reason why our friends at FanDuel are giving me a little under 10-1 odds to make the playoffs, you know?
Oh, and I got one more thing to say. I'm sorry to cut you off, House, but I've been saying on Twitter that it is your civic duty to bet against the Philadelphia 76ers and the Phoenix Suns. The Philadelphia 76ers, 1935-2 against the spread. The Phoenix Suns, worst record in the league against the spread, 1937-1. At the end of the day, if you're an American citizen and you bet on sports, this is your civic duty. Fade this team. I mean, this is up there with going to jury duty. This is up there with paying taxes. It is your duty to fade this team as much as possible.
Can't fight you on that. And listen, I need to do more of my civic duty in everyday way, shape, or form. And it'd be nice if that civic duty rewarded me with some winning bets along the way. Guys, when we come back, we'll dive into the hierarchy of the Western Conference, how it has emerged, I think, in a top four. We'll see if the guys agree, disagree with that top four that I would put out there, and I don't feel any sort of hesitation about it. We'll also get to Eastern Conference. Who wants to make the playoffs? Can we find any value with any of these teams? We'll try to. East Coast Bias Boys just getting started. We'll come right back. Welcome back. You know, it's pretty obvious the way things have kind of materialized in the Western Conference, to me at least, guys. I see a pretty clear top four. Now, how you want to rank them, I think, is the beauty of the interpreter and a beauty in the eyes of the beholder, or however you want to phrase it. But the way I see it, Raheem, you got OKC as the top dog in the Western Conference. I don't think anybody's going to argue that. But I think that next three, it's take your pick between Denver, Lakers, and I'm putting the Warriors as that fourth team. Sorry, Houston. Nice regular season team. Sorry, Memphis. I've seen enough of you where I don't think you're on the same level as the big boys. With Butler now being in the mix with the Warriors, and obviously the Lakers with the ageless wonder LeBron James, Luka Doncic, the way they've been coached, the way they've defended, would you push back, Raheem, in any way on that top four that I'm throwing out in the Western Conference?
No, I wouldn't push back at it at all. I think right now it's the Oklahoma City Thunder, Los Angeles Lakers, Denver Nuggets, and it's the Golden State Warriors. I think those are the top four teams in the West right now, regardless of how you see the standings. You know, there's people who might want to argue Memphis, but I'm not buying Memphis, and I'm definitely not buying Houston because I don't think Houston has a playoff level offense at all. So it's unfortunate because as much as the NBA They want to move on from the LeBron James and the Steph Curry years of them being the faces of the league. It seems like nobody's stepping up. Like, what's going on?
Well, they can't move on, JJ, because those two teams went out and added, crucial pieces to the playoff run. I mean, as a fan, it's amazing. I'm not from Dallas. I don't have any rooting interest in Dallas. I feel bad for the good people of Dallas. But Luka and LeBron together on the Lakers for this playoff push is fantastic. And Jimmy Butler paired up with Draymond, paired up with Steph. This is honorable. This is an honorable way for Steph, especially at this stage of his career. There's nothing surprising that we've seen this extra pep in Steph's step, that we're seeing these great shooting performances out of Steph, that we see him going into iconic venues like Madison Square Garden and bringing his team along the way for the dub. It's great for us basketball fans. Let's get one last run with these dudes, JJ.
House, it's funny. I texted Raheem yesterday watching the Knicks Warrior game. Steph Curry was ice cold. It was the second night of a back-to-back. And I'm even questioning, would he be out there if it wasn't Madison Square Garden, if it wasn't that big stage? And it's amazing, House. The minute I open my big fat mouth, Steph Curry hits about 5 threes in a row, and I'm like, this damn dude can't miss. And hey, that guy loves playing on the big stage. He loves the bright lights, whether it's the Garden, whether it's the NBA Finals, whatever the stage may be. And I think it's a good thing for the league. If you're talking about a Final Four in the West that has those 4 teams in some combination, OKC taking on Golden State, Lakers taking on the Nuggets, I think you have 2 very compelling Western Conference semifinals, you know?
I love it. And the wild card to me remains Minnesota, who could be in that 7 seed or 8 seed. Minnesota, Oklahoma City. I really, secretly hope that Minnesota falls down to the 8 because I want to see a 1 versus 8 of Oklahoma City, Minnesota.
That's
Minnesota,
a scary series. House, that's a scary series for OKC.
They fear Oklahoma City not even a little bit, but even Minnesota, the Lakers is that's kind of juicy.
Yeah,
there's some
absolutely.
guys that could be a nice battle. But otherwise, we're set up for the West really falling into place because of these trade deadline acquisitions.
You think about the Eastern Conference, fellas. The storylines that we have out West with the new pieces. Obviously, Golden State getting Butler helps with this. Doncic going to the Lakers helps with this. You thought maybe Dallas would be more interesting with Anthony Davis. Not better, but at least it would have been an interesting angle. That's out the window. In the East, Raheem, you kind of have a sense right now what it's going to be, at least as far as the top is concerned. It's going to be Cleveland. It's going to be Boston and the Knicks. Then you have some mix of Indiana, Milwaukee, probably in a 4-5. And then you have Detroit, where it gets dicey and where I was still at a point where it's like, well, you got to get 2 more playoff teams. Hard to do in this Eastern Conference, Raheem, with the way it kind of shakes out. We've watched Miami. They're an absolute mess. The Nets, they don't want to be in the postseason. Toronto, maybe there's value there. The line is clearly moving in a way that would indicate that there is. The people hopped on that because they're actually trying. Help me out, Raheem. Who's making a playoffs here in this plan?
So the Eastern Conference is absolutely hilarious because Tuesday night, the Toronto Raptors, they were taking on the Orlando Magic as 7-point underdogs. They're winning the game. With about 3-4 minutes to go, they remove all of their starters from the game because they want to lose this game. They just beat the Magic on Sunday. They played it again on Tuesday. They remove all their starters. Paolo Banchero goes off. I call him the life of Paolo. He goes off and hits, what is the potential game winner. And then they have the bench guys in, and the bench guys hit a 3 in order for them to win that game, 114-113. The thing is, the Raptors are tanking. They don't want to go to the postseason, so you kind of have to remove them from the equation. That's not going to happen long term. But the Sixers stink. You can't trust the Sixers team. They are 1-9 in their last 10. I already gave you the details on them, on how you need to fade them. The Bulls right now, they're also tanking. They are 2-8 in their last 10 games, and they've recovered a game in the standings. So I think right now it's between Chicago and Brooklyn for that 10th seed and who's going to make the play in. Maybe if you want to take a flyer on Brooklyn, that might make some sense. But right now, Orlando and Atlanta are locked into 8 and 9. Same with the Miami Heat at 7.
So the crazy thing, Dream, is I love the idea of Toronto on Monday on our podcast because they were at plus 290 to make the play-in. And based on the caliber of their starting lineup, Ingram may or may not come back at some point, right, and be impactful for that team. I thought, maybe they'll make a little push here at the end to kind of salvage what the future might look like. But the point you just made about what those bums did down the stretch against Orlando, the problem Toronto has, they have by a long shot the easiest schedule in the entire NBA. Their next 5 games, listen to these games. They have Utah on Friday. They have Washington back-to-back Saturday and Monday. Then they have the tankerific Philadelphia 76ers, and then Utah. Like, they should go 4-1 or 5-0 if they're doing anything. But we know, based on your observation, they seem to have tank in their heart. So it's hard to come up with value. I honestly wanted to make a case for the Brooklyn Nets sitting at the FanDuel Sportsbook at 16-1. And by the way, you can go ahead and do this. If you're going to put a flyer on the Nets, then go ahead and bet on the Bulls as well. These are all play-in numbers. The Bulls are plus money to finish in the top 10 in the East. And they're sitting in there right now, plus 140 for them to stay in there. Now they have tank in their hearts, but at that price, and then you put it alongside Brooklyn at 16-1, maybe that's the way to do it. But Toronto's all the way down to plus 110. It was plus 290 on Monday. And then they unintentionally snatched that win from Orlando, and it's all the way down to plus 110. I don't know what the hell to do, JJ. Maybe bet all 3.
Yeah, it's a convoluted mess. And part of the problem in trying to, figure out what's what is the motivation and the incentive for who actually wants to be in the postseason or who wants to end up in the flag sweepstakes. And that's a major monkey wrench here. One thing we can say, House, Atlanta, they're going to end up in the playoffs. They want to. Out of all of these teams that are kind of there, you'd have to look at Atlanta, even though they've tailed off from where they were earlier in the year. I got to figure their incentive is to be in the playoffs when it's all said and done.
It's one of my favorite bets available on the board right now. Plus 104 for the Atlanta Hawks to finish inside the top 8 in the East. And that means that they are effectively bumping out the Miami Heat, right? Because I think Orlando will end up salvaging.
I don't.
I don't think that.
Take a wild guess on how many teams the Orlando Magic have beaten over 500 since Christmas.
Not very many. Not very many.
They've beaten 1.
I was close.
Yeah,
I was close.
And it was the Knicks without Karl Anthony
Doesn't
Towns.
count.
So you would have Atlanta jump over Orlando. You wouldn't give them the pass.
Yeah, Orlando's not making it.
All 3 teams are very close to each other. Miami has an advantage in terms of playing fewer games than both Orlando and Atlanta, but Miami has 29 wins as we're taping this. Orlando with 29 wins and the Hawks with 28 wins. The Hawks are trying. I mean, the Karis LeVert, game winner from the other night, they are looking like they're trying to find some chemistry. And I do believe in the Hawks effort here. Plus 104 in the FanDuel Sportsbook. I like plus money odds.
Yeah, I do too, House. And remember, a couple weeks ago, I know it feels like another lifetime ago, but a couple weeks ago, this astute panel grabbed the Golden State Warriors at a very, very manageable price to go and make the postseason. And listen, we get them wrong sometimes. I'll be the first to admit when we do. This is one where we clearly got the best of the number, best of the market. And oh, by the way, you are not going to see minus 115 or minus 118 for the Golden State Warriors to make the playoffs maybe for the rest of the year. So we're going to enjoy that, I think, very, very much. Knocking on wood, of course, there are no injuries. Raheem, we could get you on board with that price at Atlanta, minus 104 to make the playoffs?
Yeah, you definitely. I mean, it's plus 104.
Plus 104, even better.
My mistake.
Even better.
I like Atlanta to make the postseason, but I don't like the price at plus 104 because let's say they're in the 9-10 game. You basically have to win 2 games in order to make the postseason. And then if they're in the 7-8 game, you have multiple chances for them to make the postseason. So you could just bet that game straight up. So it's just like there's no incentive to really grab that number now because it's not at plus money. And it's like they have no chance of really making the 6th seed. So I think you should probably wait on that.
Okay, all right, we'll keep that in the memory bank. And one thing that works in their favor, guys, House, we've seen it a lot the last couple of years, they have a lot of playing game experience. I feel like Atlanta is one of those teams. They know a thing or two about how that week works. There's no uncertainty there.
I have a good friend from Atlanta. He calls them the play-in Hawks. It does
play-in Hawks. I like that.
Seem to be by design.
I like that. Boys, when we come back, the NFL and free agency will take center stage next week. However, there are some moves already being made, and I want to see if the guys have any interest in investing in a certain team in the NFC North. Are they believers? Are they believers in a certain team that plays in Chicago, Illinois? We'll find out when we come back right after this. Welcome back. Free agency kicks off next week. You're already starting to see the trickling of moves as far as guys who are being cut, as far as guys who maybe are finding new homes, re-signing, all that mumbo-jumbo. Well, today, Raheem, the Chicago Bears made some news, and they've made some news really over the last few days involving adding veteran, accomplished offensive linemen, which was a major weakness and a major Achilles heel for them last year. They go and get Tooney earlier today from the Kansas City Chiefs, and I know he was put in a very unfair position. The guy's an outstanding guard. Chiefs had no tackles. They said, all right, big boy, go do the best you can. See if you could go and handle tackle. He struggled mightily in the Super Bowl. He's still an all-world guard. Chicago, they're anywhere in that 39 to 45 to 1 range to go and win the Super Bowl. They have this whiz kid head coach in Johnson. We know his schemes were unreal for the Detroit Lions over the last couple of seasons. The way I see it, Raheem, despite how that division profiles is a lot of strength on strength on strength, Lions are really good. Packers have a lot of talent. Vikings won a bunch of games last year. I think this is a monstrous second year for Caleb Williams. With Johnson coming in, with the linemen they added, I don't want to hear any excuses if he stinks 3/4 of the way through the year. This is a monster-proof year for Caleb Williams. You agree or disagree?
It's definitely a monster-proof year. And I'm a big proponent of this. Second-year quarterbacks, I like to take them to win MVP. Because a lot of times what typically happens with these second-year quarterbacks, these quarterbacks who are still on these rookie deals, these teams are spending money. And they're making trades, and they're doing all the things that they need to do in order to capitalize on that window where they're not paying a quarterback big bucks. So I would sprinkle a little something on Caleb Williams to win MVP. I'd also do the same thing for Jaden Daniels.
Well, I know that's music to my buddy's ears as he's lighting up right now thinking about it. He knows Deebo Samuel is going to be in the fold, which should make that offense that much more dynamic. I still think, House, for what it's worth, there's some gas in the tank for our guy Deebo Samuel. But, last year, everybody wanted to get in on the Bears, House. Remember, that total, I know it sounds crazy considering the regular season that they had. House, they had a win total that was either 8.5 or 9.5 last year. So Vegas was very bullish on Chicago. I know they are improved. I know Johnson's great at drawing up plays and whatnot, and their line should be better. I got to see it from Caleb Williams. I know the talent is there. I know the skill set is there. Being able to master the basics of playing the position, I didn't see that last year, House. So before I'm getting involved in any Bears futures, I need to see in the early going that this is something Caleb Williams can deal with.
I agree with the assessment on the offensive side of the ball, and I'm interested in Dream's thoughts on this, what that line will be for the regular season win total for the Bears. I honestly would have it at 8.5 again. That's what makes the most sense to me in that division in the NFC. Even with the improvements that they're making, and it's very much obviously a work in progress here. Ben Johnson leads the board right now on the FanDuel Sportsbook, plus 700 to win Coach of the Year. I'm not doing that. But the question mark to me with the Bears, and that the way that I'll handicap it, is what's happening with that defense, because it fell off a cliff. And they were very undisciplined, basically from the Hail Mary. Honestly, from that Hail Mary play, where they were extraordinarily undisciplined, where the D-back was all the way over waving at the Washington fans and then had to sprint 60 yards to get involved in the play. the Bears defense fell off a cliff. So that will be the element that I'll be eyeballing. But, there is reason if you're a Bears fan to be enthusiastic about building the trenches. And, the idea of Ben Johnson scheming in a way to protect Caleb from his own, sort of worst instincts, which was not the case last year. He was running around and holding the ball too long. So reasonable optimism right now for the Bears, but I'm not getting involved in anything too crazy futures wise. But I'll look at that win total if it's around 8.5.
House, I want to stay in the NFC North here because Sam Darnold is about to go and be one of the more fascinating free agents that's available over the next few days. There's still a chance, unlikely, but there's still a chance he could end up back in Minnesota. Would you feel better about getting involved in Vikings overs and them to make the playoffs and them to be, dare I say, a contending team if I tell you Darnold once again is their quarterback and they're not turning to JJ McCarthy?
Yeah, I don't have any problem with Darnold in that place, in that system with those guys. He established a level of confidence, established a level of trust. I don't know if that's the best decision for the franchise. Like, you can't have a rookie, you can't use a high draft pick on a rookie like McCarthy and have him just sit. It costs you money. It costs you, if there's a giant opportunity cost there. But the idea of the Vikings running it back, to me, is kind of fine because, that floor, they still have the two most important positions filled, which is the defensive coordinator and the head coach. And as long as they have those guys, then I think that the trajectory for the Vikings is heading in the right direction. And I think Darnold was basically, they didn't play well against Detroit and they lost that game to the Rams. But for what they're trying to do, what they're trying to establish, I don't think it's terrible to have Darnold back in terms of the success of next season.
I don't think it's terrible either. I kind of have mixed feelings on it. I mean, how sustainable do you think last year was for Sam Darnold? Was that just a fluke year? So I'm kind of not mad at it. There's not a ton of quarterbacks out there, but at the same time, you kind of want to throw McCarthy out there to see what he has. But if you look at the teams in their division, the Green Bay Packers, they've always sat and waited and developed their quarterbacks. And maybe that's the way to go with JJ McCarthy. You look at Aaron Rodgers, he sat behind Brett Favre. You look at Jordan Love, he sat behind Aaron Rodgers. So maybe if you give JJ McCarthy a year or so, maybe he's the guy next year. So I can't be mad at that. Even Patrick Mahomes, he didn't play his first year as well. So there may be something to it towards zigging while everybody's zagging. Everybody wants to throw those quarterbacks out there in rookie year, and they're not necessarily ready or prepared. So, I think they can't go wrong with either choice.
So for what it's worth, guys, I can understand the argument of Minnesota saying, hey, we had a great regular season. Darnold played great. Let's run it back one more year. And maybe Sam could go and get more money somewhere else after the fact. The way Kevin O'Connell has been talking up Daniel Jones, saying he thinks he can do a lot of the things that Sam Darnold was able to do, getting himself into the system. Maybe this is me playing detective here. That reeks of we're comfortable moving on from Sam Darnold and that Daniel Jones is going to be backing up J.J. McCarthy next year. I could be wrong on this, but that's the way I read it. Now, I'm going to say something that I think you guys are going to throw tomatoes in my face for because I think it's an unpopular take, very unpopular take. I absolutely love the idea of Aaron Rodgers going to the Vegas Raiders. I love it. I absolutely positively love it. I think I love it. I'm telling you why, guys. I think Denver overachieved last year. I know everyone's talking about the young roster, Sean Payton, Bo Nix. To me, a lot of smoke and mirrors with the Broncos. Chiefs are still going to be the Chiefs. We all know that. But are they going to be the 14 or 15 win Kansas City Chiefs? Not so sure about that. Chargers, hey, they have some decisions going on defense. Bosa, Mack, the way they finished up the year against the Houston Texans in the playoffs. And I know Aaron Rodgers brings a lot to the table, House, from a baggage, negativity standpoint. But if you're telling me Pete Carroll, who is a winner, Tom Brady knows a thing or two about maintaining a 40-year-old body and a ton of cap space, and Brock Bowers and Crosby now getting the highest paid contract in the league, I will bet the Raider over if Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback next year. I want it on record. If it happens, remember where I said this. I will bet the Vegas Raiders as an over. How about that, Joe House?
Well, let me hear your projected number for that total, and then I'll let you know whether or not I might join you. Where do you put that win total at, JJ?
7.5.
Okay, all right. So 8 wins, and they are in the same division as the upstart Chargers and the upstart Broncos and the kings of the block, the Chiefs. Those are 6 division games. How many of those do they win? I mean, I'm not going to sit and torture all of America making us go through their schedule.
No, this is a good exercise. I like it.
They get the benefit of a last place schedule, so that's helpful.
That is helpful. I think they could get to 3-3 in the division. I do.
Well,
I don't think that's crazy.
They do play the Chiefs tough. They play the Chiefs.
They
tough.
do.
They do play the Chiefs tough. And
tough.
look at the cornerstones on defense. I mean, Christian Wilkins didn't play at all last year. Max Crosby, enough said. And Raheem, I see a lot of cap space too. So I don't think you're going and paying. Let's say that Aaron Rodgers is their quarterback. Is he getting $50 million a year like Matthew Stafford? I don't think so. I think you're getting him on a discount. And if he plays the way he did over the last 6 or 7 weeks, I'm cooking with something here, Raheem. I think I am.
Here's the question. So if you get Aaron Rodgers, do you get Devontae Adams back? Because it appears that they are a package deal.
Package deal. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they're joined at the hip. And if you look at the Raiders' 2025 opponents, House said they play a last place schedule, but they also play the NFC East and the AFC South. So,
well, I don't mind the AFC South. I'm not complaining about that. And then the NFC East is it's twofold because you get Philly and Washington. But I also would argue I get a game against the Giants. That's give or take.
The Giants on the road, the Cowboys on the road.
And Dallas, who could go a variety of different ways. Listen, guys, I like the fit. If I'm Aaron Rodgers, I'd much rather be in Vegas, Raheem, than be a Giant. That's my 2 cents.
That's tough. That's tough. Just because I have such a huge respect for Brian Dable, I just think Aaron Rodgers, you put him in that system, and the Giants might have the best offense they've had in a while. So that's tough for me.
I'll tell you, House. Pete Carroll, Tom Brady, Chip Kelly, Aaron Rodgers. Oh, baby. That's juicy.
Oh, Chip Kelly is with the Raiders?
Coordinator.
Oh, I was about to say.
Uh-huh.
See, look, I'm not an Eagles fan, but I remember the Chip Kelly days in Philadelphia, and things did not go well at all. And I did not like how
as a head coach.
Yeah, as a head coach.
As a head coach.
Well, I just want to be on record alongside JJ. I will say I'm rooting for it because I think from a content perspective, it'll be immaculate. It'll be profound. And I will say, if you want to be glass half full about it, playing in that dome, the number of home games that they get, there's a big difference for the home games at MetLife. On the one hand, you would say, well, Aaron Rodgers is accustomed to MetLife now because he spent all those home games with the Jets. But on the other hand, that stadium stinks.
No, you're an older quarterback. You don't want to play in the cold.
Right.
The turf stinks. You nailed it. You don't want it. No.
Yeah.
I love it.
I
want it to happen. Let's will this into existence next week. Aaron Rodgers, silver and black. Yes, sir. When we come back, we'll bring back the Ringer grab bag. We'll throw a variety of unknown topics to my guys. It should suit their fancy. It should be up their alley. And we'll have a little fun. That's coming your way next. Welcome back to Ringer Grab Bag, which means you don't know what you're going to get. There are a couple of things on my mind, and I'm going to throw the way of our esteemed panelists one by one. I may jump in when I see fit, and we go from there. Joe House, you're up first. Would you be willing to invest right now in Cam Ward to be the number 1 pick in April's NFL draft? Yay or nay?
It's a yes. Yes, I would, without hesitation or reservation. What the NFL has demonstrated to us over the years is quarterback is the king position, and he is the best quarterback prospect. And there are a whole bunch of teams that need a quarterback at the top of this draft board. Yes, Cam Ward, number 1.
I'm right there with you. And even if you want to tell me that the Tennessee Titans are not going to go and take a quarterback and that they're in love with Travis Hunter, they're in love with Abdul Carter out of Penn State, they will go and trade out of the pick. I'd be stunned if they're sitting there saying, hey, we're going to take one of those guys at 1 when, oh, by the way, the New York Giants are looking for a quarterback and the Raiders and the Jets. And, yeah, I don't know why anybody's not mentioning the fact that the Cleveland Browns are also looking for a quarterback. So I'm right there with you. I think he'll end up being the number one pick in the draft. Okay, Raheem, you, my friend, have seen a lot of corruption and a lot of corrupt boxing matches over your years of covering the sport. Now, I may be putting you on the spot with this one, but I'm going to do it anyway. Was this past weekend a top 3 candidate, in your humble opinion, for one of the most corrupt and one of the most bizarre finishes you have ever seen?
That was definitely a top 3 most corrupt match I've ever seen in boxing. And it's one thing for the judges to get a decision wrong. We've seen that happen with Pernell Whitaker versus Julio Cesar Chavez. We've seen that happen. I mean, we've seen the Sports Illustrated cover with Pernell Whitaker on the cover and it's saying Rob. Bad judging happens. But when you have bad refereeing, bad officiating to where they don't call an obvious knockdown. When you put your knee on the ground, that is a knockdown. The judges aren't even allowed to call that a knockdown because the ref said it wasn't a knockdown. So they couldn't even take liberty and actually make the score the right score because the referee didn't call it a knockdown. So this is the worst. And look, we've seen Sonny Liston versus Muhammad Ali. A lot of people say Sonny Liston took a dive. We've seen a ton of bad judging. This can't happen, and I'm not sure if I've ever seen this ever before, but we always find ourselves saying that with boxing.
Fair enough. Raheem going through the history lesson of the sport that drives him much love and much pain all at the same time. Okay, Joe House, speaking of pain and love all combined into one, that's golf. We got the Arnie this weekend right before the Players. We have a loaded field. It looks like all of the big guns are ready to go. All of the big guns are going to be involved. Is this going to be a chalky Arnold Palmer weekend? Remember, Scotty Scheffler won this event a year ago. Are you feeling chalk with a guy like Scotty or Rory, or is this going to be more wide open? How do we see this weekend in the golf playing out?
Yeah, so this one lines up as a pure chalk play because of a combination of factors. In the first place, it's a very small field. Only 72 guys in the field. There's going to be a cut, but it'll be top 50. So you want to grab the cream of the crop here. The other element to the handicap is it's very hard. They really make this golf course a great challenge because it puts the guys in the frame of mind to get ready for the Players in the first place. And Augusta National is barely a month off our first major of the season. And so, yep, I'm investing in guys that have top 5 and top 10 finishes at this place. Scotty Scheffler, top 5 is one of my favorite bets by far. And then I'm looking at guys like Hideki Matsuyama, who has a good track record here. Justin Thomas has quietly been playing very good golf and has a good finish at this place. Patrick Cantlay, like, it's cream of the crop time. These are guys that are ball flushers, right? Ball striking is the key at this venue. You want guys that flush it from like 175 to 215. These guys all fit that bill. Look for a chalk outcome this week.
House, any interest getting involved with Colin Morikawa at the Arnie, or is that a pass for
No,
you?
speaking of flushers, he certainly fits the bill, and he's had a sort of so-so season, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him kind of press down a little bit at this venue this coming week.
Raheem, I am going to give you right now the odds at the moment to win one of the more competitive divisions in all baseball, the National League East. The Atlanta Braves are plus 135. Your beloved Philadelphia Phillies, after losing to the Mets in the NLDS, are at plus 180. And the Mets, who gave out the richest contract in the history of sports to Juan Soto, are at plus 210. As of right now, Raheem, it is early March. Braves, Phillies, Mets. You can make a bet on one to win the NL East. Who would your choice be?
Ooh, that's tough. That's really, really tough. I'm going to go with my Phillies. I'm going to be a homer right now. I don't
hate it, Raheem. Listen, they have the best pitching out of anybody in that division. I think that if you're going to make the case for Philadelphia, I don't even think it's a case of homerism. It's, hey, I have Wheeler, I have Nola, I have Luzardo, I have Suarez. I got better pitching than the other two teams, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm thinking. And, is my guy back from the Braves yet? Acuna?
Not yet. You're going to have to wait on Acuna. You're going to have to wait on Spencer Strider. But it's telling, the way I see it, that they are favored Atlanta to go and win the division, even though, hey, Acuna, they're saying maybe May. Strider, they're talking about May or June. Hey, the Atlanta Braves won 90 games last year. Everything went wrong. They still found their way into the playoffs. That team knows how to win. I think Atlanta being favored, justified. But for what it's worth, in this new baseball playoff format, Braves, Phillies, Mets, all going to be playoff teams. When we come back, it's best bet time. The boys will get in the lab. We have a Thursday card in the NBA. We have the Arnold Palmer Invitational. I may throw a baseball future your way. You never know what you're going to get for this best bet installment. Next week, we're going to have a lot of college basketball to throw your way, which I am very excited about. The boys will come back with a bang right after this. All right, best bet time. We can go a variety of different ways here. House, are you going golf? Are you going hoops? What do we think, buddy?
Why can't I do both? We like Scotty Scheffler to finish in the top 5 now. When you see this program, the tournament will have already started, so you will need to live bet Scotty Scheffler to finish inside the top 5. That's fine. Whatever the price is, do it. The man is locked in, and he loves this venue. And then I want positive vibes only for the good people of Portland, the Portland Trailblazers, to make the play-in the Western Conference. All I have to do is get to 10 plus 950 on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Let's go ahead and feel good about Portland.
I like the sound of that. Raheem, Thursday, what are we thinking, sir?
For my best bet, we're going to go with the Indiana Pacers, -4.5 on the road against the Atlanta Hawks. I think this is a good spot for these teams. Indiana Pacers, they have 1 day off. The Atlanta Hawks, they're home playing their third game in 4 nights. Hawks had that comeback victory against the Memphis Grizzlies, but I don't think the Pacers are going to allow them to come back in this game. This number is at 4.5. I think it's going to go up before game time. So let's lay with the Pacers.
Like the sound of that, Raheem. Okay, we're going to take our dive into the baseball futures pool as we have about a 3-week sort of gap between now and opening day. So you got to fire on these before these games get going. The Arizona Diamondbacks, despite missing the postseason, ended up being very good to me a year ago. They found their way to their over. They're a team that scores a ton of runs. They are a young, dynamic offense led by the great Corbin Carroll. I think they'll survive the loss of Christian Walker because they're going to pitch a lot better in 2025 than they did in 2024. I'm seeing the Arizona Diamondbacks. You see their total, 86.5 wins. They're not going to beat out the Dodgers for the NL West, but they are going to be a playoff team, and they're going to win north of 90 games. Marte, Carroll, I love that 1-2 punch. Give me Arizona over 86.5 wins at -115 on the FanDuel Sportsbook. That's going to do it for this loaded edition of East Coast Bias. Great job as always, House, Raheem. We will be back next week. We'll have Anthony DeBundo joining us to have some fun with some of these conference tournaments that'll be going on. College hoops and the NFL free agency going to be taking center stage. A lot of moving and shaking as far as that goes. The boys are out. JJ signing off for House and Raheem. We'll see you next week.